Hello, I'm Father Charles Everson, Communications Director for the Society of Catholic Priests, and we are about to do the third in our installment of interviews with members of the Society here at our 10th annual conference. Say hello, Father Robert.
Hello.
You introduce yourself.
I am Fr Robert Hendrickson. I'm the rector of St. Philip's in the Hills Episcopal Church in Tucson, Arizona.
Lovely. How long have you been part of the Society, Father?
Well, I have been a part of it since before it was born in some ways. I was telling somebody yesterday that I remember sitting in my living room when I was in seminary. We were talking about getting the Society going. And so I just went on Google and I Googled Anglo-Catholic Episcopal churches. And I just got a whole list of, I don't know how many of these churches came up. Then I went through and started identifying all the clergy of them, and I just started sending emails, like sort of blind copy, emails to anybody who was out there who showed up on this very scientific list that I had compiled using, high quality metrics and big data, and ended up. That's how we started. So we started sending emails to folks all over the country. Started talking to folks we knew, and I'm trying to remember when was the first conference.
This is the 10th annual conference.
This is 10th, so yeah, so 11 years I've been a member of the 10-year-old society.
So at that time, what need were you seeking to fulfill in forming the society?
I think the need that I was, as we were getting ready to go into parish ministry, I wasn't ordained yet when we started it, but the thing that I kept coming back to is that the heart of life in seminary was this kind of disciplined, shared commitment to pray together, a kind of commitment to hold one another accountable to the kind of deepest truth of our vocation, in terms of both theological, spiritual, and so I wanted to find a place that could do that, and not just do that for a couple of people that perhaps you might get close to in ministry, but for people all around the church, and for people who all around the church for whom other such societies might not have been a natural home, or they couldn't be a home for them.
What does it mean to you to be an Anglo-Catholic?
It's a good question. It's sort of shifted over time. I think at one point I would have probably spent a lot of time talking about the specifics of things like the way one does the liturgy or whatever, and it's broadened for me over time. And I think what it means at this point in our life is a kind of commitment to the conversion of ourselves and the church and the society around us by the gifts that God has unveiled in tradition. So when you say sort of Anglo-Catholic, it's about more than just a kind of particularly fussy kind of English tea party liturgy. There's a kind of core desire to go as deeply as we can, whether that's into the truth revealed in Scripture, whether that's into the living grace of the sacraments, whether that is into the depth of our tradition, and sort of figuring out what was there at the heart of it all, at the beginning of it all. And when you talk about sort of being an Anglo-Catholic, I think it's that commitment to do that well, to do that with integrity, to do that with perseverance, so that you never stop the kind of quest to go deeper. And so I think for a lot of us that has been revealed in a way of, and a commitment to tradition, a commitment to the tradition of the church, both the Episcopal Church, the Anglican heritage, and the Catholic Church sort of throughout history. There's that piece of commitment. There's the commitment to go deeper into Scripture, to not be content with easy answers, to go deeper into the sacramental life, to not be content with sort of, I got my communion this month and now we had a particularly glorious liturgy at Christ Church New Haven one time, and someone said after it, well, now I know I'm not an Anglo-Catholic because there was so much smoke and so much whatever. And the rector at the time said, no, that doesn't show whether you're an Anglo-Catholic. Or morning prayer on Monday morning. That's the Anglo-Catholic commitment, is that it's more than the show. It's more than just a kind of that undergirding the desire to do whatever we do as fully as we can, as one does with a big liturgy. Undergirding that is that commitment to do morning prayer, noonday prayer, evening prayer, make your confession. All of that undergirds not only the show, but the commitment to create beauty, not just liturgically, but to use that going deeper to create beauty in the world around us. And so I think as much as we are changed by that encounter with the revelation of God and the beauty of, say, a liturgy, we're then called to create that same kind of beauty in the world around us, to go out and challenge unjust systems, to go out and do the kinds of things that we can't do when we're sort of just privately spiritual and being fed only by some kind of religion we found on the internet that morning. That's probably a longer answer than you wanted.
No, it's exactly what I was looking for. So, in your time as an ordained person, you mentioned Christchurch, New Haven.
Yes.
You're now at St. Philip's in the Hills. Tell us about maybe some times when you served as a staff clergy person at a parish that didn't particularly embody your spirituality, maybe that didn't identify as an Anglo-Catholic place.
Sure.
Talk about that.
Yeah. So I would say that the first parish I visited, the first Episcopal church I visited, was Christchurch, New Haven. So my wife and I was a Roman Catholic at the time. My wife was Methodist, and so we walked into Christchurch, New Haven. It was some great feast day with so much smoke you couldn't see the altar, and bells ringing and Latin being sung in processions and all this stuff. And I remember just being sort of transfixed by it. And we walked out of the church, and I turned to Carrie and I said, if I have to go to church, because I wasn't that churchy, if I have to go to church, that's how church should be. She said, I'm never going back there again. So we ended up at another Episcopal church in town, Trinity on the Green, which is sort of old school English cathedral style low church. It's a morning prayer with hymns and anthems on Sunday morning, and it was wonderful. And so then I couldn't have said that I could never have articulated that I was a Catholic or an Anglo-Catholic, whatever it was. I didn't know those terms. What I did know is that I loved Trinity on the Green and Christchurch, New Haven, because they both seemed to embody an authenticity where they knew who they were and they communicated that in a kind of way that had real power to it for both places that were very different. I'm going to tell you another funny story. My ordination later was at Christchurch, New Haven, where I ended up serving for about 7 years. And at the ordination, I heard one of the vestry people from Trinity, my very low church sponsoring parish, say, "If I have to say Mary one more time here." So anyway, so then I went on to St. John's, Denver, the cathedral in Denver. Was there for around 3 years. And it's a place that has some sort of Catholic sort of tradition in it, but it's a place that's also wrestled with its identity, as some places do, where successive deans had very different church personship, and so the place itself, I think, its identity is it's a cathedral, and so it lives into that as fully as it can. And then St. Philip's in the Hills, where I am now, is a funny place because it's had rectors of all sorts of churchmanship all over the map. It's a large congregation. The founding rector was very Anglo-Catholic, and we had we have beers where you can carry statues in procession. There are monstrances and thuribles and all this sort of stuff. And I think his vision was that that's what it would be. But it ended up that the congregational identity has shifted over time. So the next rector after him was different, and the next rector after that was different from those two. So its identity, I would say, is still in flux. And I think one of the opportunities in large congregations is you have the opportunity to serve people wherever they are in their spiritual life, because you don't just have one service on Sunday morning. You have multiple services, multiple modalities for people to pray, multiple ways for people to serve in the community. So it's one of the things that I value is I don't have to feel like I have to impose anything, because the whole range is there. So on Monday and Wednesday we have a east-facing Rite One Mass in the chapel. We also have a gathering called Come and See, where people just gather around a table with sort of progressive language liturgy. We have the standard prayer book services on Sunday mornings. So the range is there, and what I think the intersection between parish identity and priestly identity is an interesting one, because when I got there, we made some changes to liturgy, but it was mostly about making it cleaner in some ways, kind of just tightening it up. And I've told them a number of times, I said, if I had my way, I would shove the altar up against the wall and you'd never see it again because there was so much smoke. But I don't do that because it's not about what I want to do. I mean, it's about sort of what feels like an authentic expression of what this place is. In the same way that I was drawn in by morning prayer with hymns and anthems at Trinity on the Green, by High Mass at Christchurch, New Haven. And I think when something feels like an authentic expression that is not a compromise between the priest and the congregation, but is something more like a mutual pursuing of what's true together, which is, I think, what good liturgical expression is that mutual pursuit of the beauty of holiness and that you do together. And so if that's done authentically, I don't think it matters whether that is 5 people around a small table in the middle of a chapel in the woods, or if it's the sort of grandest liturgy one can imagine. I think that all of it's the authentic expression of holiness that comes through when the right synergy of people and place comes together.
What role do you see the Society of Catholic Priests having in the context of the wider Episcopal Church and Anglican Church of Canada? And what opportunities do we have as a society to contribute to that common life?
Sure. I think part of what the society can do is be sort of, I think, both anchor and sail in a time of change. And so you need those things that hold a boat fixed in a storm, right? So that you can keep, as kind of the winds blow and we don't know what's going on in the wider life of the church. We don't quite know what trends are going to hit us. When you look abroad and you see what's happening in churches, one wonders, is that the future for American Christianity? And if so, how do we hold ourselves steady in the midst of that? The society can do that. We can be sort of chaplains for a changing church and a changing world, and sort of holding our eyes fixed on the thing that has sustained us all through time, which is that deep relationship with Jesus Christ and that deep commitment to make that relationship known with the wider world. When I say sail, there are also times when you have to move. If you sit in a port in a storm, you may get blown over. So I think we also have the opportunity, because there's such creativity, prayerfulness, energy in the society. I think the opportunity is also there for us to move the church in new directions and to move it in ways that bring people along. As I watched this morning, I'm having conversations at a table, listening to people talking about starting young adult service programs, listening to people talk about starting homes for battered women. I heard somebody else talking about creating a transitional housing program that would also be an intentional community. That was one conversation with 4 priests at the table, all of whom were committed to creating social change using the deepest tools of the church: community, prayer, intentional living. So that's the synergy I'm talking about, where it's the anchor of those traditional practices also being a sail, pushing us to change the world around us because our hearts have been changed in that kind of intentional, deep engagement with one another and with God and Christ.
So my last question is, if a seminarian or fellow clergy person were to ask you, why should I join the Society of Catholic Priests, what would you say?
Well, I would say if you're looking for a place where you will have dynamic conversations with folks who are really dreaming of a changed world and changed church, not for the sake of change, but for the sake of going deeper into being in relationship with God, this is a place to go. There was a year, I remember the conference in Detroit, the sessions we were having, we had sessions about campus ministry, young adult ministry, church planting. The conversation we should be having all over the church, they're being had at the Society of Catholic Priests. And I think they're being had here because we have the sense that souls matter in our congregations. The buildings are fine, the budgets are fine, but what it's actually about is the souls of the people we minister with and to and alongside. And the society gets that. So when we start talking about doing significant work like planting a church or a campus ministry, we're doing it first and foremost not to save the church, but because the church saves us. And if those are the kind of conversations you want to have, this is the place to do it.
Thank you, Father.
Thank you.